Hi everyone, Rick Bushell, Invincible Painting Basics here. I've replaced the door for my work shed, and it used to look like this. Now I did obviously a little bit more than just put the door on. I actually finished the frame. It was a temporary door, the first one, but it took me about 12 years to get to it. I picked up this door secondhand, $50. It had all the locks. It even had it was obviously a front door. I was too lazy. I wasn't going to fill the hole, so I just left it on there. So it's pretty cool for a shed, I guess. But in all honesty, it's overkill for my shed. And if I was going to do it for my home, then I would even have done it even different and much better. The main reason for this video is to show you how I paint a 6-panel door. Now, for those that want to jump straight to the meat of the video, there'll be a time code below. I used the green paint because, one, I had the green paint already. And two, the contrast was so great. You can actually see what I'm doing, where the two videos I've made before, you could hardly see the difference. So anyway, normally I would paint a door in situ where it's hung, and I would just open this up, and away I'd go. But because it's almost impossible to see from that angle to paint this door, I'm going to take this door off. And I'm going to take it inside, set up the camera. You'll have a much better angle of what I'm doing. So let's go in and paint this door. Because been a painter for so long, just by looking at this door, I can tell usually 99.9% of the time what kind of paint is on the door. And when I say what kind of paint, I mean, is it a water base or is it an oil base? So I knew instantly that this was water base. You can kind of see what I've sanded. I've sanded very lightly, but it starts to come off. I'm not going to strip this door because it's only going on my shed. And you see this spot down here, it just comes off with your fingernail. It's not too bad. I've seen a lot worse, but it shouldn't even be like that. The main issue is that they've painted straight over the top of a finished door, and finished means that it's got a clear coating on it of some sort. It's either been sprayed with lacquer, or it's got a polyurethane or varathane or varnish or something like that on there. And what they've done is they've just gone straight over the top. They may or may not have sanded it, I kind of doubt it, and there's no undercoat on there. So this is why this sort of thing happens. And when this sort of thing happens, there's a way around that, but that's a different video for a different time. But to repaint this, I've already given this a bit of a sand, as you can see. But if you don't know what kind of paint it is, it's so simple to find out what kind of paint is on a surface that you are about to paint. And this is hugely important, because when you know what kind of paint you're painting over, that dictates on what kind of system you use. That dictates if you need an undercoat or not. To just paint over anything without knowing what you're kind of doing, you're almost guaranteed paint failure. And in this case, it's coming off in places. So to find out what you're painting over, whether it's water-based or oil-based, it's really simple. I've got some methylated spirits here. Rubbing alcohol will do the same, and I've got a rag, cotton rag, an old cotton rag. I'm just going to wet an area. I'm going to wrap that wet area around my finger. And I'm just going to, anywhere on the door, I'm just going to give it, like, say, 2 swipes. We'll do 3, just for good measure. And you'll see, right there, the gray paint. And that, the reason why that is because this is soluble. Even though it's dry, it's soluble by spirits. And right next to it, this door behind it, I painted this years ago with an oil base. I already know it's oil base because I painted it, but look, we'll do the same thing. So, little wet area around the finger. 1, 2, 3. And there's absolutely nothing there. So if it dissolves and shows up on your rag, it's water base. If it doesn't show anything, it's at least an enamel or some other special kind of coating, because it's simply not dissolved by the spirits. 99.9% of the time, I paint these doors while they are still hung, in situ. I can paint around the hinges and all that. It probably is a good idea for a DIY to take it off. It doesn't mean you have to, but it's probably a good idea. And if you are taking it off, make sure you take off all the hinges so they're nice and clean when you put them back on. I've taken off all the hardware except for this deadbolt. The deadbolt it's just too hard to put it back together, so I'm just going to paint around that. I'm going to kill 2 birds with 1 stone in this video. One is I'm going to show you how to paint this door. 2, I'm doing a review on the new brush that have come out, Stingers. I've been sent 2 brushes by the Stinger company. And we've got the normal Stinger and the Stinger Pro. Now I find the normal Stinger, without even using it yet, just that little stinger bit there, those those two little bits that stick up. I find the blue one a little bit stiffer, so I think that that one's going to be probably a little bit easier for DIYs. I would probably go ahead and use that one. And I know for a fact that they're coming out with just a normal brush with no stinger on it at all. So I'm really looking forward to trying that. But we're going to paint this door using the Stinger Brush Pro. There's a system to painting panel doors, whether they're 6-panel or 4-panel doors. And if you're going to paint by numbers, it's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now a lot of you might even have this set up on horses so it's lying flat, which is probably a good thing. It's going to allow you to probably get less runs. But because I've painted doors like this 1,000 times over, I've got my own system. I still go 1, 2, 3, 4. But then the more important part is how you, when it comes to the mullions and the styles. So you've got a board right there. You've got a board going across. You've got another board coming down, going across again, another down. The very first thing you paint is this one panel right here. You paint this next panel second. So let's do that. So you dip your paintbrush in. Remember, I've always told you, don't scrape, dip, tap. So you got a lot of paint on there. And if there's a lot of paint on there, it's going to be a lot easier to do what I'm just about to do here now. And that's to get paint right up into those corners. So my very first dip, it's got a lot of paint. The very first thing I do is I just kind of take a little bit of that paint off. The next dip, the next stroke goes straight into that corner. And I really push it in there. More paint, the tap. I'm using plenty of paint here. Now you might have noticed I wasn't concerned at all how that paint went on there. I just got a lot of paint on there. So now, once all that paint is on, you got the whole thing covered with paint. It looks absolutely terrible. There's brush marks and drag marks everywhere. So now we just neaten it up. I go from the bottom of this lip right here, nice and gently. And I go across, nice and gently. I take off any high bits there. I work fast enough. I don't have to worry about that. But because it's a warm day and I'm filming it, it's going to take me 5 times longer. So I've got to be a little bit more careful. So it's the same thing again. And not being careful at all about what it looks like yet. Also, don't try to get it to cover. This is actually looking pretty good, but I know that once it's dry, it's not going to cover. So we're not too worried about that. Again, the panel. I'll slow down a little bit, make it look a little bit easier. Notice always the tap. I've got a fully loaded brush every time I put that brush back up on the door. Dip, tap, a lot of paint. Ooh. Okay, now we neaten up. I do number 4 panel. I will say, getting into the corners with this brush, is probably a tad easier than brushes I'm normally using. But I'm not entirely happy with the stroke that leaves, the brush mark that little tip leaves, the stinger. Even if I'm gentle, it's still leaving a brush mark. So that's a negative in my book. Now, before I do the bottom panel, and this is because my knees are so bad these days, the next step is to start doing your mullions or your styles. I always get that mixed up. So it's this first one here, and you go up past into the next board, down into the next board. You lay it off. So you lay it off by coming from down there, and from the top down, bottom up, top down. And then you do this next one. Just be a little bit careful when you're painting here. You've got that rollover. You've got your brush, I'll overemphasize this. You've got your bristles going over this edge, which means you're going to get paint rolled over that edge. So just make sure that when you're finished, you just go down that edge a little bit. Maybe the other one. Make sure you don't have any big drips of paint. Okay, from this point, we go across the top. And here you kind of want to cut in. This is where a good brush comes in handy. You just want to cut in. Because you don't want to come into this board. You don't want to come into this board right here. So when you finish off, you want that line to finish right there, from this edge to that edge of those panels. Same thing, kind of cut that in. I start bringing down the styles, or the mullions. Like I said, I can never remember anymore. And from here, you don't want it. You want that line straight through there and straight through the top. Here I don't go all the way down yet, because if you notice, we haven't got our board there painted across. So I just stop short on both sides. Because I've got this painted white on the back, you're going to get a little bit of paint rollover on that edge. And all I do on that edge, doesn't look too bad, but I want it perfectly straight. And to get it perfectly straight, you have a wet rag. You wrap your thumb or your finger, and you just put it on the white side, or whatever color it is, and you come down, changing your rag all the time on your finger or thumb, and what you're left with is an absolutely perfectly straight line. So your neighbors and your family will wonder, so your neighbors and family will be thinking, you got a professional in. Okay, this is where I get on my haunches. Oh, gosh. That cut in pretty good. Quite impressed there with that. So that's one coat. Looking at it, doesn't look too bad, but it doesn't look too good either. I'm gonna let that dry for a few hours and I'll probably come back. I'll give it a light sand and I'll paint that again and it'll be finished. I just want to say too also with this new brush, not happy with the way it lays off, but really happy with getting into the corners was probably a tad easier, and I was very impressed the way I could cut around that, and it made it look nice and easy. You know how I'm always on about good brushes. You can't do that. I can't even do that with a bad brush that's not designed for cutting in. Just like that, painted. If you like what you've seen, click that like button and subscribe so you don't miss out on the upcoming videos that I'll be uploading soon. And one last thing, check out my new website. I built it, probably needs a bit of work. I've got a lot more stuff coming on there to actually fill it out with content, and we started a blog, so you might like that. There's really neat little tricks there. This is Invincible Painting Basic. I'm Rick Michelle. Stay safe, everyone, and we'll see you next time.